It's like 7 a.m.
Good morning everyone, welcome to another Exile protest. It's Tuesday the 17th of May 2022, it is 7:36 in the morning. We are at the Mayfair Hotel in London, which is a very expensive hotel, and we're here because it's the Africa Energy Summit. And you might think, well, that's good news. Africa has the potential to produce 40% of the world's renewable energy. But you might guess by the banner that's written out, End Oil Colonization, Colonialism, that a better name for the summit might have been Africa Fossil Fuel Summit. So we got here, as you've just been watching, we got here a few minutes ago. There's people on the canopy above the main entrance. There's people standing underneath with banners explaining why they're here. So we've got loss and damage compensation now, so we'll find out a bit about that later on. Schlumberger enabling oil destruction, on trial. So we've got lots of banners here, so we'll go and talk to those people in a minute. When we arrived, as you saw, there wasn't really any security here, so everything went quite smoothly. I think a couple of managers came out and spoke to the rebels, and the rebel was able to say, we're not going to block the main door, it's all going to be very nice, you don't need to worry. So everything calmed down a bit then. So let's go and talk to some of the rebels to find out why they're here and what message they want to give to the fossil fuel industry. Right, I'm live streaming. Would anyone like to talk about why you're here? Anyone? Okay, I shall move along. Would anyone like to have a chat on the XR live stream? Anyone?
Hello.
There's a loudspeaker being turned on. So I've got the press release, so I've got some information. Well, that sounds as though is anyone going to make? So I can tell you why we're here. There are 4 main demands that the protesters have. If I get my piece of paper ready. Right, demand number 1 is they want the governments to cancel the third world debt, the debt that African countries have. And this is one of the reasons that although Africa, if you've seen the latest United Nations report, is forecast to have 700 million or up to 700 million climate refugees in 8 years' time. African countries are so desperately poor, they need that money from the oil.
Everybody hear up. We're going to be broadcasting messages from Africa.
So, African countries are very poor, so they have to sell the oil, even though they realise it's speeding up their destruction. They need the money now, so they're prepared to sell the oil for it. The next demand is they want to refund, they want renewables to be funded, and Africa is very sunny. It has the potential to provide 40% of the world's renewable energy. That's a really good thing, and also it'd be a really good source of employment in Africa, because there's something like there are 12 million renewable jobs around the world, only 3% of them in Africa. Well, since Africa's got a potential of 40% of the world's renewables, that's something that's being missed out on. And they want the oil companies to leave. The oil companies, they make money out of Africa. If you've seen the Ogoni land in the Niger Delta in Nigeria, it's they've been there for 6 years. They've caused a lot of pollution, a lot of damage, and in fact, at this summit, you might be asking, if it's the Africa Energy Summit or the Africa Fossil Fuel Summit, why is it being held in London? Well, that's because 60% of all future oil extraction in Africa is controlled by companies that are based in the... Oh, there's a chanting going on.
Colonialism now! End oil colonialism now! Africa. Justice for Africa. Cancel the debt. Cancel the debt. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Fund renewables. Fund renewables. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Loss and damages, compensation now. Loss and damages, compensation now. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Fossil-free Virunga. Fossil-free Virunga. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Stop EACOP. Stop EACOP. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. End oil colonialism now. End oil colonialism now. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Cancel the debt. Cancel the debt. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Fund renewables. Fund renewables. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Loss and damages, compensation now. Loss and damages, compensation now. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Fossil-free Virunga. Fossil-free Virunga. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Stop EACOP. Stop EACOP. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. End oil colonialism now. End oil colonialism now. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Cancel the debt. Cancel the debt. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Fund renewables. Fund renewables. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Loss and damages compensation now. Loss and damages compensation now. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Fossil-free Virunga. Fossil-free Virunga. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Stop EACOP. Stop EACOP. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa.
So that told you in a much more musical, much more creative way than I was trying to tell you. So far, the demands I got through were cancel debt, fund renewables, oil companies to leave, and then to pay loss and damages. Now, as part of the COP 2015 agreement, the wealthy countries that produce most of a great deal of the pollution that's destroying our climate, agreed to pay compensation to the poorer countries, because the way these things work is the poorest countries, like Africa, I think each year it's only accountable for 3% of the world's global CO2 emissions, and it's responsible for 2% historically of all the CO2 emissions. Africa is entitled to have monies for compensation. Only half of the money that is due to Africa has been paid as of 2019, and also the money that was agreed, the amounts agreed, are very small compared to the real damages. In fact, some people say woefully inadequate compared to the real damages that even a single African country during the cyclone suffered $3 billion of damages. In a single. So it's going to take trillions of dollars to compensate Africa. They're not going to get that, and even the small amount they were promised still hasn't been paid. So those are the four demands, and I'll tell you now something a bit more about the Energy Summit, the Fossil Fuel Summit, African Fossil Fuel Summit. There are representatives from 12 African countries, plus there are dozens of private companies. It's due to last 3 or 4 days, the summit, and they're going to have a gala dinner. There's going to be an award ceremony. There are rooms set aside to make deals and all that sort of stuff. And you'll be glad to know, out of the entire 3 or 4 days, they've dedicated 1.5 hours to discussing renewables. It's almost as though the big fossil fuel companies aren't really interested in renewables, isn't it? So, we can now go through. I've got some more information. In Africa, there are very poor countries, and within those countries, there are some very poor people, and it's a world not of sort of it's not a world of fairness or justice or anything like that. It seems to me, it's a world where the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. So I've got some examples here of how ordinary African people are treated by these big oil projects. So, for example, last year in Nigeria, 100,000 barrels of oil was spilled in an accident, and last month, hundreds were killed in a refinery fire at an illegal refinery, which sounds quite horrible. What else have I got here? In East Africa, there's a plan to lay a pipeline to transfer fuels that will run for 1,400 kilometres. It hasn't been built yet, it's still being planned. But despite that, 14,000 households are no longer allowed to use their land. They've lost their only means of support, 14,000 families, and they're not entitled to any compensation because the pipeline hasn't been built yet. Something like that would never happen in Britain or Europe, like the imagine it happening. Here in Africa, the fossil fuel companies have a lot of power, just like the police. I'll move away from the drum this evening. I've got some more examples here of how. I've got another one. In Namibia, the oil companies are exploring without the landowner's permission. Now, quite often when you hear people talk about climate change, they talk about it as though it's something that might happen in the future. But in Africa, it's happening now. So, for example, in East Africa, they've had 4 years of drought, and because of that, 20 million people experience severe hunger. I can't really hear what I'm saying now because the drum has to move away a bit further. I've got something now about Mozambique, a single country. And this shows you that with climate change, it's not just the single climate that's changing that causes damage, but it's a mixture of things. And if you're already a very vulnerable country, then that an extreme weather event or a gradual change in the environment can just be that last sort of straw to break the camel's back. So, for example, in Mozambique, the government borrowed money from London. I don't know what circumstances it was borrowed in, but let's just say its legality is currently under investigation. And it borrowed the money hoping to pay the debt back with money earned by an offshore gas field. So you can see, they borrowed money, they need their gas field to pay back the debt because they're very poor. But they weren't able to pay the money back because the oil field or the gas field offshore never went ahead because of Islamist gunmen who interested in the money. You know, there's these things where in Africa, what might seem quite simple, just get inside the cordon quick. So in Africa, they needed the money, and Islamist gunmen, they can't pay the money back. It's like it's 2 or 3 small things all clubbed together to make it very difficult for them to respond to the climate change. And that's one of the things that academics who understand the collapse of civilization look out for. that most countries or most civilizations can cope with one big problem. But if they have several problems going on at the same time, it's much more difficult. So there's a recording being played. Let's see what happens. The police have now ordered off the road completely. Oh.
Justice for Africa!
Justice for Africa!
Justice for Africa! Justice for Africa! End oil colonization now! End oil colonization now! Justice for Africa! Justice for Africa!
The following audio recording was made for a recent oil conference, very similar to this London Africa Energy Summit, but held in Namibia. It is submitted by young people in Namibia.
Namibia's International Energy Conference. Yet another climate betrayal. This conference exposes Namibian leaders' priorities. The first glance at the sponsorship and collaborative list already highlights the nature of this conference. Perpetuating industrialization, the fossil fuel market, and investment in oil and gas exploration, with renewables as a side dish. The priorities of our minister, our leaders, are clear. To further capitalize on remaining oil reserves, further tightening the suffocating grip of climate collapse. Profit over people. Our Mines and Energy Minister is tentative in using appropriate words such as energy shift, energy mix to describe the theme of this conference. Greenwashing, again and again. While to Shell, ExxonMobil, BP, Recon Africa, now Recon Namibia and others know about renewables, other than that it shatters the energy monopoly for them. As we head for climate peaks and tipping points, further investment in carbon-heavy energy at any level is a suicide mission. One more ton is one too many.
We do not have the carbon budget for an energy mix. We need an energy replacement urgently. This conference highlights that the respective Namibian leaders' energy priorities are not in reducing the energy demand. They are not about replacing our grids with renewable sources. They are not about investment in infrastructure which is complementary to renewable energy. Namibia's priority is to further industrialize and welcome any investment as long as it is investment. Whilst many nations and individuals are boldly and innovatively shifting from the outdated, unjust, and capitalistic systems of their societies, step by step towards a more climate-smart and circular economy by portionally ditching fossil fuels, our leaders are cashing in on neo-colonialist carbon markets masked as investment, and the rest are idly watching this happen. Here we have a case study for the failure of COP26. Carbon outsourcing at its core. We need oil companies to stop flocking Africa. We need our leaders to stick to their climate talk and ambitions. We need the resources, willpower, and connections of this conference to be diverted away from oil and gas exploration and genuinely towards renewable energy and energy efficient technology. Full commitment. But instead, here we have ourselves yet another climate betrayal. Mr. Tomolwendo, today, days before Earth Day, you cling and cheers glasses with hydrocarbon specialists, capitalists, and climate culprits, and you wonder which side you're on. There is a difference between what you can do and what you should do. Just because shreds of the oil market still exist does not mean you should invest. Your investment decisions will lock us into climate vulnerability. And we are telling you that our atmosphere can no longer handle more carbon. Why is the simple truth not enough for you? Why can't you choose people over profit, climate smart and sustainable energy for people over dirty energy? Why can't you commit, even when it's most needed? In fact, Mr. Tomalwendo, the simple truth should be enough for you. You must choose people over profit. You must choose climate smart and sustainable energy for people over dirty energy. You must fully commit to the fight because we need it most now. Stop inviting investment in carbon emissions. Commit fully to energy transition for the sake of a livable world. Do not be yet another climate culprit. Yours sincerely, the youth and global citizens.
Just move away from the drums so you can hear me. I'll give you a quick update of what's happened so far. A small group of protesters arrived first thing this morning. 2 of them went straight up onto the canopy, as you can see them there. I didn't see what happened, but mysteriously some of the flags seem to have been stained and the walls seem to be stained. I'm not sure whether I think that's meant to be oil rather than blood. 2 managers came out. There was no security when they got here. 2 managers came out. The managers seemed quite concerned. One of the rebels spoke to them, explained what was going to happen, how it was all going to work. Things calmed down a bit. The police have arrived now, and they've cordoned off the road. It makes it much easier for live streaming without the risk of being run over. So it's public safety. Well done, the police. There's some people standing in front of the building with banners explaining why we're here, with placards explaining why we're here, but they're not stopping people getting into the hotel. And if you're just joining us, I'll explain why we're here. We're at the Mayfair Hotel in London, and we're here because it's hosting the Africa Energies Summit, which, as you can guess, should really be called the Africa Fossil Fuel Summit, and really should be in Africa, but it's being held in Britain because 60% of the future oil and gas extraction from Africa is all controlled by businesses that are in the global north, and 30% of all the fossil fuels that are yet to be extracted from Africa and are planned to be extracted are controlled just by 4 companies, which I think are Total, BP, ExxonMobil, and another company I've heard of called Eni, E-N-I. So it's a typical XR protest. It's very peaceful. The police seem to know what's going on. They're used to XR protests by now. We've got the usual camera people and social media goings on, the live stream. Let's see, I asked people before the stream started, a couple of people said they'd be happy to have a chat on the live stream. So let's see if we can find anyone again, see if we can find someone who'd like to speak. Because, you know, these people are doing a protest, we want to give them a voice. Hello. Would anyone like to have a chat on the XR live stream? Who knows? Well, that sounds a bit positive, no? Okay, don't worry, I shall move along. I want to give you a voice. Would you be happy having a chat off screen if you just had the microphone? No? Okay. Anyone like to have a chat on the XR live stream? They're all volunteering each other at the moment. Well done. Yes. Let's see. Hello, madam. Would you like to have a chat on the XR live stream?
I wouldn't, actually.
You wouldn't? Okay. Well, join the club.
Yeah.
No, your friends. Do you want to? Yeah, everyone wants to secretly. Right. If you hold the microphone in front of you. No, that's fine. We're all crew. Your views are just as important as anyone else's. So, would you like to introduce yourself, and in a way, given as much detail or less detail as you feel comfortable, and say how you came to be here today? Why aren't you down the shops or at work or something?
Or in bed.
I hold the microphone to make it easy for you.
I just think, my name's Christine,
Uh-huh.
and I'm part of XR.
Okay.
And I'm here because of the conference, the 3-day meeting in this hotel.
Yes.
Around the African oil fields that are being developed.
Uh-huh.
And there isn't enough, as if there isn't enough oil at the moment.
Yeah.
And we'd really rather they even think about going down there. And there are, I think, 12 governments being represented on this at this conference from Africa, and a lot of oil companies.
Okay, oh, I'm getting someone talking in my ear. I can't quite hear what they're saying. I think they said there might be a problem. I might have to come back to you in a minute. Sorry, hang on. If the person who spoke.
I'm not good at following my thoughts.
That was really good. That's the best interview yet. Well done. But if the person who spoke to me in my ear a minute ago could speak again, so I got a better chance.
It's also evident that we can't persecute.
Yes. Okay. Let me. She's speaking quite quietly. Okay. Yeah. Right. The microphone's okay. You have to shout. You have to speak up a bit if you can.
Why don't I tip this on me?
Actually, if I hold it in front of your face. So when you said we don't need any fossil fuels, that's not some mad XR view, is it? That's the view of the International Energy Authority, isn't it? That we must not have any new fossil fuels drilled if we want to keep to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
The IPCC have recommended that no more fossil fuel explorations take place.
Yes.
And it looks like what's going to go on in this hotel for the next 3 days is discussions about new oil fields, and gas and marine explorations, seismic blasting in the oceans of the South African coast.
Yeah.
And then there's all this clearing up the Niger Delta to do. The Niger Delta is absolutely destroyed by Shell and others like that.
And if you weren't here and your friends, nobody would know. They could have a meeting, a 3-day summit in Africa, in London, and no one would ever know, would they? What does your loss and damage compensation now? What does that mean? What?
Loss and damage compensation now
Yes.
means that Africa needs to be compensated for all the damage that is happening
Yes.
all over Africa. I mean, Africa is a massive area of the planet Earth.
Yes.
And it's got hundreds of different countries in it. And a lot of them have been exploited to bits over the past 200, 300 years.
Yeah, it's, as you say, and the money that's being offered is tiny compared to the damage, and they're not even paying that, are they, devils? Well, thank you very much. That's the best interview today, so well done. Someone else has stolen one of my potential interviewees. I'll come back to her. Okay.
Justice for Africa! Justice for Africa! What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? Justice for Africa! Justice for Africa!
Okay, I introduce her. Okay, okay, I'm ready now. So, we're now going to play a clip. So, okay, no. Okay. Okay, okay. Okay, okay. Right, I've had an update in my ear. There's going to be another announcement on the PA system, which I'm going to cover. And here it is over here. So it's the I'll keep going. I shall keep talking now then. It's the Africa Energy Summit, which is really the Africa Fossil Fuel Summit. The main banner says end oil. Yeah, the main banner says end oil colonialism now, and that's because of all the new fossil fuel projects in Africa that are planned. 60%, are are controlled by businesses in the global north. And you might, as we just heard in an interview just now, the International Energy Authority says we shouldn't have any new fossil fuel extraction or no new projects if we want to try and keep to the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. And quite often you hear that 1.5 degrees Celsius described as like a safe limit. You know, they say we must keep to a safe limit of climate change. But in Africa, it's already causing devastation, climate change. But because we're in the global north and we just get the global north news, we miss out on all of this. So these people here are protesting not for their own benefit. You know, they could have a much easier life if they stayed at home today or went to their normal jobs. Remember, most XR people, nearly every XR person has a job. But they're here because things are so difficult in Africa now. It's getting so little attention. You know, what other choice have they got? I went along just now and asked them would they like to be interviewed, and you know, they don't want to be interviewed. It's not shy people, but they are prepared to come and do this because they're concerned that Africa is in such a bad situation, and it's being exacerbated by the more fossil fuels we burn. And ironically, some of those fossil fuels are being, as this summit shows, lots of fossil fuels are being extracted and still planned to be extracted. One country alone, which I think is Nigeria, has something like 1/6 of all the remaining fossil fuels in the world. So there's a lot of money to be made. And you might be thinking, well, I saw in the news the United Nations is forecasting that by 2030, up to 700 million people could be climate refugees. Well, in Africa alone. Well, Africa only has a population of 1.2 billion people. So 700 million refugees is like 60% of the population. Well, it seems to be unlikely that the remaining 500 million people in Africa could support them. It's unlikely that Europe would let them in. If you remember the war in Syria, just over 1 million refugees came to Europe, and that was quite a politically sensitive subject. It seems unlikely Europe would accept 700 million refugees. My heart sinks when I think what is going to happen to those poor people. And you think, well, why is Africa then, if it's so serious, why is it still selling its fossil fuels to abroad? And it's because they are desperately poor. And one of the things that makes them poor, and one of the reasons they need the money, is because they have debt. And one of the demands of the protesters today is, one of the reasons they're here is for the cancellation of debt. One of the reasons Africa is so poor is because it has debt, and since the year 2000 there's been several campaigns to get the debts cancelled. It never happens because we live in a world where the powerful people can do what, or the powerful businesses have the power, so they do what they want. Poor African countries are in a very difficult situation. I've got some more information here from the press release. If you're just joining us, we're at the Africa Fossil Fuel, the Africa Energy Summit, which is really the Africa Fossil Fuel Summit. It's being held in London because, you know, the global north has lots of power and it decides how things happen. So Africa, when it comes to renewable energy, has quite a good story to tell. It has the potential to generate 40% of the renewable energy of the whole world. It's Africa alone. And many poor people in Africa do not have access to electricity. Like hundreds of millions of people don't have access to electricity. You know, when we say the Africa Energy Summit, they're not really concerning people in Africa. They don't seem to have a lot of interest in their welfare. It's really oil for the people who live in the global north. Africa is responsible each year for 3% of the world's CO2 emissions. The wealthiest 10% of people in the world are responsible for half the world's emissions. So that's something like 700 or 800 million people. If you live in the global north, if if you have a comfortable middle class lifestyle, if you have a pension, shares, all that sort of thing, it's the dividends of these companies that are supporting your lifestyle. Tax, well, I was going to say the tax that the fossil fuel companies pay, and that goes towards the NHS and stuff like that, we rely on. But I've seen recently the fossil fuel companies pay very little tax, if anything, and there's a concern they're getting subsidised by trillions of dollars a year. I mean, that's another matter. Let's not get into that. Yeah. Okay. I think I couldn't hear that last message I got, but I think we're going to have another message. We're going to have another announcement. So let's go and cover that. And I think you might get a separate recording.
Justice for Africa. Remember Ken Saro-Wiwa. Remember Ken Saro-Wiwa. What sort of company has a government hang people who object to environmental pollution in the Niger Valley? The Agoni 9 is an outrage which has never been properly addressed. Shell is culpable. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. Justice for Africa. And now another voice from Africa.
Emissions in our nations. The next audio recording is from an oil project affected person in Uganda. The next audio recording is from an oil project affected person in Uganda.
I always want to speak about ECOP not in isolation, because you understand ECOP is just one of the projects of oil, but we have all these other projects like Tilenga, Kingfisher, the refinery where we were displaced from, all this project. Without this project, ECOP cannot exist. So I'm going to speak to that effect. Indeed, the situation on ground, especially for the project affected persons in the 10 districts, starting with my district, is not good. I have traversed these districts from Hoima up to Chotera, which is the last district as you cross to Tanzania. You realize that most of the PAPs, or the people that were the ones who were affected, their properties were assessed in around December 2018 and up to May 2019. And it is that 2019, around May, when Total, through a new plan, the consultant that is hired to do the resettlement action plan for the ECOP, set a cutoff date. And so the cutoff date was to stop the project affected persons from using their land, for any further development. You imagine from 2019 up to now, no one has yet been compensated. People have not been using their land. Interestingly, in one of the districts, that's Kakumiro, I was interacting with one PAP who was really, he's a cattle keeper, and about 7 acres of his land was affected, and they told him, now stop, don't develop it. So he was telling me he used to bring the machines to cut the grass and make sure that the farm is clean. But because he was told that anytime you're going to be compensated, he stopped that. In Chotera district, I talked to a Muse, one of the elder there, who grow coffee. And most of the people along this corridor, they are farmers, cattle keepers. Most of them are growing coffee. And you realize that indeed there is a big challenge. People's houses, especially people's houses, are falling off. And then later on, because of the pressure that was on ground, Total came back and said, no, now you can grow crops that can not take beyond 3 months. You can imagine a coffee takes almost 3 years, 3 to 5 years to grow. Banana, and this is what people in this corridor do. So indeed, it's a big challenge. Just like the same thing that happened with my community, these trends continue to repeat. In my community, first of all, we were delayed. Since 2012 up to 2018, that's when we were resettled. Yet all the schools that were in that area had closed. Children dropped out of school. Today, if you come to the area where I stay, where I am right now in Chakaboga, where we are resettled, it's really a mess.
Right, and we're back. We're live again, and I've got here a lady who's happy to have a chat on the live stream. Right, if I get the you need to hold the microphone quite close in front of your face because it's quite noisy and everything. So, madam, would you like to introduce yourself? And
yeah. My name's Belle. I'm here holding a banner at this action today.
Okay, what does the banner say?
It says fossil fuel Virunga, and I don't know if people know where Virunga is.
Well, tell us. Lucky you're here to tell us.
Well, I'm actually not exactly sure of its geographical location, because the moment I hear the word Virunga, I think of mountain gorillas. Okay. I mean, that's what Virunga is best known for.
Yes.
Is this habitat for these incredible creatures.
Yes.
And we're here today really to protest against what is the digging up of Africa. Africa, pristine wildernesses being just torn up for the exploration of oil. Oil is substances. We just don't need more oil.
No.
And we actually need these lands as they are, pristine, beautiful, absorbing carbon, home to natural species, wildlife, ecosystems that can never be replicated anywhere else on Earth. We are trading a precious, I don't even want to call it resource, places, peoples and animals for something that we just don't need any more of. The system of global inequity is ridiculous. The world's richest 10% emits about 50% of carbon emissions, and meanwhile African people themselves are not profiting from these schemes. They're not getting rich. These are ordinary people who have been displaced. They're losing their culture, they're losing their heritage, they're losing their land, they're losing their wildlife. And we're here to say we need to give the power back to these people. We need to restore in them the dignity of living on their own lands. That are, this oil is just going to the rich northern countries to produce more goods that we don't need. It's a travesty and a crime. And I'm really, I can't urge people enough. What do we value here? And what we value is the natural planet, the earth, and the future for our kids. What we don't need is more stuff produced by fossil fuel companies, and we need to take the power away from the fossil fuel companies. So we're here today to express all of that. We need to cancel debt, because a lot of these the poorer countries are ploughing up their own lands because they're trying to pay back debt to Western nations and rich northern nations. We need to cancel the debt and allow them to just be. Thank you so much for this chance. Thank you.
Great. Whereabouts, for people who don't know, whereabouts in Africa is Virunga?
You asked me that before, and I'm so ashamed. But what I would say is look also to the Okavanga Delta, which is in Nigeria, I think. Just extraordinary beauty, currently being ploughed up by Recon Africa.
Thank you so much for that. Brilliant, thank you.
Justice for Africa! Justice for Africa!
Yeah. Okay, so I think there's going to be another recording playing, so let's see if we can listen to that.
English or French. So one of the things that I would really like to advocate for all activists who are concerned about the pipeline is just to collaborate to put content out in Kiswahili. Because if 80% of that pipeline is passing through Tanzania, it means that the Tanzanians have the right to know that. They have the right to know what impact it has.
The next audio recording is from Maria Sarungi. This audio is taken from a recent Stop ECOP webinar.
For the Tanzanians, the biggest problem has been the inability to gain access to some very important facts in Swahili. And that has been a huge hindrance in this campaign when it comes to activities, because there is quite a lot of information. There are a lot of people talking about it, but they're either speaking in English or French. So one of the things that I would really like to advocate for all activists who are concerned about the pipeline is just to collaborate to put content out in Kiswahili. Because if 80% of that pipeline is passing through Tanzania, it means that the Tanzanians have the right to know that. They have the right to know what impact it has. I would quickly segue, because I'm very conscious about the time, Tanga is seeing also some of the Maasai who have been displaced moving into Handeni, which is around that area. So I think there's going to be a lot of problem. And actually that area has also seen a lot of conflict between the so-called, what they say, the pastoralists and the farmers. So there's going to be a lot of issue around that. I don't even want to touch on it in this little time that I have, but there is going to be some really serious conflict around land. So although we love to say Tanzania's got a lot of land, free land, actually this pipeline could cause a lot of conflict around land issues. But let me quickly touch on another very important aspect, which is human related. And I think that needs to be very well put in arguments. One of that is the fact that we've seen the what is it called, LNG plant? So it's the liquid gas plant going from south of Tanzania all the way up as a pipeline that was planned, and it has seen a lot of conflict already. There was actually some quite extreme violent reaction from the people, from the citizens about a decade ago or less than a decade ago. And we are seeing that entire area in the south, which borders now with Mozambique, with Cabo Delgado, that extremism is coming up. And one of the reasons is that actually these extremists, although yes, they are also coming from Al-Shabaab up north probably, but they can recruit the local people because they feel displaced, because they feel marginalized.
Okay, I think we're back now, and I've got a very special interview lined up with the people who are standing on top of the canopy. Hello, canopy people. Hello, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Population-wise, we are the largest French-speaking country.
He's Richard. Socks. That's a nice name. Right. Richard and Socks, what are you doing on top of the canopy? You're... Louder.
And it also has 60% of its land mass as forest. The DRC is considered geological scandal, and it has such a rich subsoil full of mineral resources.
So they said they're here to shut. That's quite an ambitious target, to shut down the entire African oil industry. Well done you two for trying to do that. And you're, as you say, it's in London, because why is it not in Africa? So it affects the communities much more, and it doesn't need to be traded by white men in suits. So, and what was it like climbing up the ladder first thing this morning? You went up there quite quickly. I couldn't do that. I'm so old now. What was that like going up there? Exhilarating. They were nervous. No.
And when we looked at the figures, they're terrifying. There is so much more at stake than my immediate.
So okay. So Sock says she didn't plan to spend her 20s doing this, but she's so terrified now she knows what can happen to the climate. So Socks, if you weren't here, if the climate change wasn't here, what would you be doing with your life?
Oh my God, I'd be having a delicious cup of tea at home.
Yeah. Have a cup of tea at home. That's good. Richard, do you want to have a say now? How? Radiator. Okay. That's you'll. No.
Because who else is going to? We need as many people to stand up and fight against this industry, distracting the earth.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just repeat what Richard's saying because it's quite quiet. I'll just repeat what you're saying because it's quite quiet. So Richard doesn't want to be here either. Although if I was more adventurous, I think I might quite like sitting on top of the canopy. Well, I'm a bit busy at the moment, sadly. So, you want to shut down the entire African fossil fuel business? Have you got a specific message for the people who are coming here today? There's representatives of 12 African countries. There's dozens of other businesses. What if you could say, have one thing to these people? What would you say?
Are you not so ashamed?
Yes.
Even if you're not terrified by the implications of climate change, and you should be, but your children, how are you not ashamed to see how it goes down to people in those communities?
Okay, I'll just repeat that. So Sock says the people here ought to be ashamed. They must be ordinary people. They must have families of their own. Their families are going to suffer just as much as anyone. Why are they not ashamed? How do they turn up at a posh London hotel and have a nice 3 or 4 days having dinners and having a nice chat.
And to the people in this hotel, there is other money for you. You don't need to be hosting oil conferences.
Yes.
This is not your business. Like...
So Sock says, to the people who run the hotel, they could have, especially in London, it's a beautiful building, isn't it? They could have business without having to take the oil money. And a big fossil fuel company, all their people, all they really know about is fossil fuels, all their facilities are fossil fuels. But for a hotel, there are other things they could do. That's well said. So thank you. Because you're quite okay. I don't know how much of that you heard. Right, there's some more banging going on. Let's just walk around, see what's going on. So if you're just joining us, then we are outside the Mayfair Hotel in London, which is a very wealthy part of London, and we're here because it's hosting the Africa Energy Summit, which really should be called the Africa Fossil Fuel Summit, and it's being held in London because 60% of the oil and gas that's going to be extracted from Africa is controlled by businesses from the global north. 30% of the oil and gas extracted is going to be exploited by just 4 businesses: Total, BP, ExxonMobil, and another business called ENI, I think that's pronounced. What you might think, well, Africa by 2030 is due to suffer really hardly by climate change, and there could be up to 700 million climate refugees. Why are the African countries still allowing so much oil to be extracted from them? And it's because they're desperately poor. And one of the reasons that some of the countries are desperately poor is because they have debt to the global north. So one of the things the protesters are demanding, or calling for, is for the debt to be cancelled in Africa. And there has in fact been, for the last 20 odd years, there's been a protest to cancel the debt. It's been well known how poor people are, how much they suffer because of the debt, but it never gets sorted out. Well, those days of talking nicely, writing emails, having nice meetings about it seem to come to an end. And now people, it's such a desperate situation now. They're sat on top of canopies. There's a bit of interest here because some people seem to be arriving at the hotel. There's a protester holding up a banner. Some people are getting in. The people could get into the main entrance this way. XR isn't stopping them, but because the police have put up a cordon, they're not letting them through. So they're going in through through a side entrance. So, which is fine because XR doesn't want to stop them. It wants just to gently remind them how serious things are becoming in Africa. And ironically, a lot of the guests here are
Justice for Africa! 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 What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Justice for Africa! 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 What do we want? Climate justice! What do we want? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! What do we want it? Now!
So suddenly, all of the people towards the people inside. So I won't film inside. We want to respect their privacy, and we don't want to cause them any undue stress or worry. But that's a nice reflection of the banner in the window. So I wonder what it's like being in the hotel now. If you're from Britain, I think we'd have quite a good idea about what XR is all about. There are, though, dozens of XR groups all across Africa. And at one time, Africa was this distant, mysterious place. Now all the XR groups are on Twitter. All the XR Africa groups are on Twitter. You can see the goings on. They post videos of terrible floods. By 2030, the United Nations believes that each year in Africa, up to 2 2.7 million people could be made homeless by flooding alone. It just gets worse. You know, the more you look at it, the more serious it seems. It's like those security guards are letting more people in. I've got some more facts here about Africa if I get my piece of paper out. So yes, there are. Hang on. So we had a question earlier on about where is Virunga. It's near it's in East Africa. It's near Rwanda. I don't know if that helps very much. So there's a bit more chanting going on. Trouble is, there's very few people here. Partly, I suppose, that's because of the, you know, the element of surprise. You know you're about to come and sit on top of the canopy. Well, if you're watching this and you're in London and you can easily get to the Mayfair Hotel in London, I think it's at Stratton Street. It's near the closest tube station is Green Park, and you come out to Green Park. There's something going on. Well, the socks are radiator. They're completely fearless. You can see the width of that ledge. They've just crawled across. They've walked across. I'm not sure what this effect will have on the that door now. Whether the police will ask them to close it, or whether the security people let people in still. There's people going in now. There are a small number of police officers. They don't seem too concerned at the moment. There's one police van, so I think maybe you get 6 or 7 police officers in the van, so that's how many are here now. So, if you'd like to come and join in, there aren't very many of us at the moment, but it's a short walk from Green, and it is, if I can go down to the road name, you come out of the Green Park tube station, you walk towards the Ritz, you come down Berkeley Street on the way to Berkeley Square, and then if I can see about my glasses on, it is Stratton Street West 1. I don't know how long it's going to carry on for. We've been here since about 7:15 this morning, 7:30. The main part of the protest is this banner that says End Colonialism now. And that's because in the Mayfair Hotel is the Africa Energy Summit. Representatives from 12 African countries are here, plus dozens of representatives from major fossil fuel companies. There's a bit of chanting going on.
Nemo Bassi is a Nigerian architect, environmental activist, author and poet. This audio is taken from a recent Stop ECOP webinar.
At this moment in time, Africa is suddenly attractive. Africa has always been attractive for exploitation. We're so accessible to the whole world, right? At the center of the world, surrounded by water, you could approach Africa from any direction, by land, by air, wherever you want. And so this is why Africa has been such a readily available area for exploitation by all kinds of forces. But at this time, as we speak, with the war in Europe, with Europe looking for ways to shift away from depending on Russian oil or Russian gas, you're going to find a lot more interest coming to Africa. Things that should have been halted would be kind of restarted. And so we have a big challenge there from the fact that focus is on the continent to get more resources. Nigeria is taking up the argument about sending oil from Niger Delta to Europe through Morocco along the coastline. Another project to take oil through the Sahara Desert, through Algeria to Europe. And so the interest will continue to build. Does oil enrich any nation? I don't know. I heard the argument for the African Union itself says that Africa must develop with oil because the global north have done so. And I think it's a very specious and crazy argument, because the fact that somebody used a resource that we know is destructive does not mean that we should follow the same way. After all, we have only one planet, and we can't, and this resource is bringing massive human rights abuses, as we've already heard. And Nigeria has been extracting oil for 64 years. And I think the only thing that oil has brought to Nigeria is infamy, is destruction, this ecocide, is massive, massive degradation. When the United Nations Environment Program assessed the environment of Ogoniland in Niger Delta in 2011, they announced that all the water bodies in Ogoniland, both ground and surface water, were contaminated. In some places, they found benzene 900 times above World Health Organization standards. And in some places, pollution from oil has gone deep into the soil, down to 5 meters. A couple of years ago, when some areas were being cleaned up, the hydrocarbon pollution had gone as deep as 10 meters. It's hard to imagine. And now let me just say, I said that oil has been a deficit force. It's been the downgrading of the Nigerian economy. It hasn't improved the life of the people. It hasn't improved the economy. It hasn't made energy available to the people. Most Nigerians don't have access to electricity, don't have access to clean water. So infrastructures are all broken down. Educational system is in serious trouble. The healthcare for the rich, they have to go to Europe even to treat their headache. So I do not see the kind of wealth that oil has brought to Nigeria, if we must use it as an example, as #1 oil exporting country in Africa until maybe recently. And so the proposition that oil enriches any nation is total falsehood. Oil enriches the oil corporations, because in Africa, they are the operators, and they work in tandem with governments, so our governments are unable to regulate.
So,
Justice for Africa!
Welcome to the Africa Energy Summit, which may not be going quite as the big oil companies hope to go. There's a small number of people here. We're in London, outside the Mayfair Hotel. The Energy Summit is being attended by representatives of 12 African countries, plus the representatives of dozens of the normal big fossil fuel companies. Now, the protest really involved putting up a banner, people standing with placards explaining why we're here. The police have come along, they've closed the road, which means people are no longer going through the main entrance of the hotel. The hotel have opened a side entrance, so the people who were standing on top of the main canopy have now, expertly like cat burglars, gone between the main canopy, across that narrow ledge, and they're now on that balcony. They're now casually having a smoke, which makes me think they're one of the cool people. When guests are coming, they're going in through the side gate. There's lots of security people here, although I'm hoping they know XR, and they know, obviously we don't want anyone to suffer stress or worry, so as not to be attacked. But it is a bit embarrassing, and in fact, the two people who are on top of the balcony there, they're called Socks and Radiator, and the one message they had for the people coming to this summit in the next 3 or 4 days is they think they should be ashamed. So it's easy to come to an anonymous hotel, attend a conference, plan the destruction of our civilization by planning to drill more fossil fuels from Africa and other places, like in Africa as well. If there's a small group of people here, you cannot pretend you don't know. They're welcome to come and engage with us. They've got a banner here they're holding up to the people who are coming into the conference, and it says Justice for Africa. These are the 4 demands. They want them to cancel the debt, because one of the reasons that African countries have to keep drilling oil and selling oil to the big internationals is because they're very poor, and one of the reasons they're very poor is because they still have a lot of debt to pay. They want renewables to be funded, and that's important, because Africa has the potential to produce 40% of all the world's renewables, and it will also be a good source of employment. They want the oil companies to leave because after 60 years, they've done so much damage to the environment. Oil companies always prioritise their own profits and supplying the global north, which we all benefit from. And then they want African countries to be paid loss and damage, and that was part of the COP 2015. The poor countries who cause the least pollution and who do the least damage, but suffer the most, should be paid compensation. Well, the damage, even now, being carried out to the environment and to African countries, is billions of dollars, trillions of dollars a year. A single storm, well, I mean, I've got my piece of paper here, a single storm in Mozambique. Right, so hurricane or cyclone Idil killed in 2013 13,000 people. Did you know there's some more people going in? I wonder if they're ashamed of what they're doing. Just ironically, these are probably African people going in. I wonder this is another dimension of class. I suppose it'll be the wealthiest people in Africa coming in. The poor people obviously not going to come here. The great thing about this protest is these people aren't protesting for themselves, they're protesting for people in Africa who don't even know these people exist. Certainly they don't know they're protesting. That's such a beautiful thing to do, to do something like this for someone who you'll never meet, but just out of a strong sense of right and wrong. There's some more of those security guards having a chat. They look like they're... So anyway, 2013, Hurricane Idil, okay, in 2013, so as I say, in 2013, 13,000 people were killed in a hurricane in Mozambique. 13, did you hear that on the news? I don't think so. I don't remember hearing it. It cost, that one storm cost $3.2 billion, and it displaced millions. 2013, millions of people were displaced by a single event. So when you hear the United Nations say 700 million Africans will be displaced by 2030, it sounds impossible. It's already happening. You don't have to believe the science. You don't have to trust the politicians. It's already happening. You can see it with your own eyes, or at least you could do if only the media reported it. What else we got here? So Africa as a whole has $75 billion in interest on debt, and they need the fossil fuels to pay for those things, pay for that debt interest. So what we need is a 7-fold increase in renewables in Africa, which would be a good start, and also the poorest people in Africa, hundreds of millions of people, they don't have access to electricity. They do not have access to clean cooking fuels. So even if they wanted to live sustainably, it's impossible. We've just abandoned Africa. All we want is their oil. They really are on their own. What else have I got here? So, well, here's another thing. With the big oil companies, all of their infrastructure is to do with fossil fuels. All of their professional skills is fossil fuels. You can understand them being a bit reluctant to change, but as Socks and Radiator, who were the two people standing on the balcony, said earlier on, the hotel could quite easily take more guests. They might lose a bit of money, but at least they could sleep peacefully in their beds at night. And it's not only the hotel, but also the people who finance these projects. So on my list here, I've got JP Morgan, Barclays, Standard Charter, and China Development Bank. And they're they're the main funders, I think, of fossil fuel projects in Africa. So I'm guessing the people at JP Morgan could have quite a comfortable life and never invest in fossil fuels again. You can only have so many swimming pools, so many nice cars. You could do that. So maybe if someone from JP Morgan is listening to this, that's something you could do. And don't trust what I'm saying here in the middle of a road in London, someone you've never met, but at least look into it. At the recent recently the banks have been holding their AGMs. I saw one XR protest at Barclays AGM, and the chief executive who was there, after being heckled by an XR person, has agreed in principle to meet Sir David King, who was the government chief scientist in Britain about 20 years ago. Sir David King spent a year investigating the causes of climate change and the potential impacts, and he did it with 100 experts from all over the world, including people from India, from China, because China wants to know whether it will no longer be able to feed its people. So Sir David King is very concerned, and his main concern is flooding, that by 2050 will put at severe risk all of China's rice production. So the board members of Barclays, hopefully, are going to meet Sir David King. So maybe they will find out, maybe something will change. And if it does change, it will all happen because one single XR rebel, incredibly brave, stood up in the Barclays AGM and made that very simple request, which is astonishing. You know, wherever you go in XR, you meet people, ordinary people, who just do such incredible things. And then the rest have to live stream. So the focus of the protest at the moment seems to So what Radiator is saying there is these people in Africa who die during a cyclone aren't just dying from natural causes. It's not just a normal cyclone that comes along. Those 13,000 people, if the chances of a cyclone happening are greatly increased from climate change, if the strength of the cyclone is greatly increased, if thousands of people are killed, then what Radiator is saying there, really, they're being murdered. We know it's happening. We know if we carry on burning fossil fuels, it's going to get worse. We know our actions are going to kill people, are going to make hundreds of millions of people refugees. So if that doesn't get you out of bed in the morning to come and climb up on top of the hotel, nothing will. Looks like they're doing something else. They've got another bag there. I don't know what they're doing. Fortunately, we're at one end of the road and the drums are at the other end, which is always a good place to do the stream from. We've got the police are watching on. There's somebody who doesn't want to be filmed. What else is going on I can tell you about? The usual bits. I've got a bit of trouble with the audio at the moment, so I'm having to speak to my phone, and I'm not sure it'll be that easy to interview someone. Okay, so I might try and find someone to chat to. So, okay. Would anyone here like to be interviewed? I asked you before, madam, you weren't here.
No, I passed you on to somebody who was really good, but I'm quite willing to say something.
Yeah, well done. Well done, madam. Okay.
Yeah.
So, only one microphone's working at the moment. Okay. So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes.
I've got to do the microphone and the camera at the moment. So, would you like to introduce yourself and explain to me how you came to be here today?
Okay, my name is Barbara, and I came here today.
Hold it close to your mouth and speak quite loudly. Okay, it's the phone microphone. I have to come close to you, and you have to speak loudly.
Okay,
well done.
As loudly as I can.
So you said your name's Barbara, and why have you come here today?
Okay, my name is Barbara, and I've come here today because I'm really shocked by what I've discovered recently about the oil colonialism that is still going on. And when I read the facts, I mean, I really couldn't, I couldn't believe that there's going to be something like 100 million people in Africa suffering from fuel poverty, while the world's oil billionaires must move in. 39% of the Africa could provide 39% of renewable energy.
Yes.
But at the moment, it's being plundered by these great oil adventures. There's something like 1,000 ongoing projects. That is absolutely out of line with the international, the IPCC, that is the body that put together a recent report saying we absolutely need no new fossil exploration, and yet without any concern for the future of the planet, never mind the people in Africa who are going to be so severely damaged by all the pollution. And then, of course, the money that is made from all of this doesn't go back to them. They are the ones who get any profit from it. So, apart from the numbers of small countries who are left, with damage that will take God knows how long to repair, oil that sinks in meters into the ground, pollution, floods, droughts, there's going to be food shortage, so many complicated side effects from this determined effort to try and get the best out of the fossil fuels that are still there by people who have absolutely no conscience about what they're doing to people of Africa and to all of us.
So that's the thing, when you said, when you found out how bad things were, you were surprised. When I found out, I was surprised. We just don't hear about it, do we? We don't know.
Hear about it, no. So, coming here yesterday when I was going through the information, before I came here, obviously, before you get involved in anything like this, it's to know why you're here.
Yes.
And I find it astonishing that so little of this information is available, and that we know we have to do something about it. If we get to 1.5 degrees, we're really cooked.
Yeah.
We're at 1.2. You can see the evidence all over. In India, temperatures that are absolutely unsustainable. Yeah. And yes, we have people arriving here in the 3 packed days when they're going to be discussing their oil ventures. There's only going to be an hour and a half left to discuss renewables, and yet Africa has a potential, as I said, to supply 39% of renewables. And instead, what's happening? All the profits that will be made from the oil ventures there will not be going back to the people there. They'll be going back to.
And you're here today. What about your friends and family? Are they concerned about it? Because quite often I meet people next door, they feel on their own.
They are, but of course, friends and family are relying on. It's a very small thread of communication. This is the sort of thing that means more and more people will hear about what's happening.
Yes.
At the same time, when you're going to step out onto the street there and ask anybody, do they know anything about this, and then look at you quite vaguely, because it's so hard to believe that despite the IPCC, that is the International Intergovernmental Report on Climate and climate change, despite these reports, it just doesn't sink in. People just get on their ordinary day and they have no idea that there is this absolute flagrant, criminal, complete disregard for our future by people who know fully what they're doing. It's deeply upset about it. I hope this gets aired by other people.
It's live now, and I think on YouTube normally get between about 2,000 and 5,000 people.
Right.
So that's
Well, if every one of those just tell one other person just to look at some of the details, some of the actual lists, there's a list the length of your arm of
it's not subtle, is it? It's blatant.
No, it's absolutely blatant.
Yeah.
And of course, people who are already suffering are going to be, as I said, suffering far more. And we are at a tipping point. We only have a couple of years to put this straight.
Yeah.
And if we don't all take responsibility, everyone doing some small thing will make a difference on the world stage.
Okay, thank you for the interview. I'm getting a message in my voice. It's the sound, it's with the drums and everything. It's quite difficult.
Very difficult.
Yeah, they ought to ban. The government ought to ban these drums, shouldn't they? Annoying people.
But on the other hand, it does cause attention to them.
It does.
Incidentally, what I have here on my forehead, I'm not going to wipe it away with
oil. Okay.
It came down from the big banner here when I was walking. So I didn't actually put this on, but I think it's a fitting symbol of oil face.
I was too polite to ask what it was.
Yes, it is part of the oil that came from the.
What do you think about the people on the balcony?
So brave.
Yeah.
I think absolutely. Well,
astonishing.
I can't stand on the table without feeling quite slightly unnerved. So.
And then just now they just ran across that narrow ledge, didn't they?
I saw that.
That's the thing about being an old person like me. The thing I've noticed in XR, young people are so beautiful. They're so full of energy, and they don't mess about. There's so much hope there, isn't there?
It's
astonishing.
These are the people who are going to sort out the world.
Yeah. Okay. I think with the drums it's suffering now, but thank you. That's a really good interview. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hello. I'd like to interview you. I'm having trouble with the sound, which means I have to hold it right up against your face. But shall we have like the banner as the background? Okay, yeah, come here. That's it. Come down a bit. Might be. That's it. So we have to shout at the phone because the sound's not very good. Yep. So would you like? Thank you very much for volunteering to interview, by the way.
No problem.
So would you like to introduce yourself and say how you came to be here today?
Sure. Yeah. So hi, I'm Choco, she, her, and I came to be here through Extinction Rebellion and for those of my friends who are active in the climate activism movement and coalitions of movements globally.
Oh, we'll have to cut. There's something happening inside, which is a bit of a surprise. We'll come back to you because you're a real star interview. So something's happening inside. I have no idea what's going on or whether you can hear me or anything at all. Oh, look.
Renewables, cancel the debt. Justice for Africa. End damage. Justice for Africa. End of colonialism. Cancel debt. Renewables. Justice for Africa. End of colonialism. Renewables. Cancel the debt. Oil companies.
I can't over there, just wanted to see what's going on. What's going on?
I think it's from when there's a protest.
Why though?
Are you with these guys, sir?
No.
What, staying with us?
Yeah, well I was trying to,
Yeah, I can escort you out of the hotel, sir.
Right, we're back live. Everyone's been crowded around the phone because we all wanted to see what was going on inside the hotel. So I'll give you a quick commentary of what was going on. We saw the floor, we saw some legs, we saw people sitting on the floor with their legs. Then the screen went blank, so I have no idea what's happening at all now. But so we're all a bit of a loss. So as I was saying, how brave XR people are, how beautiful young people are. It just gets. Oh look, we're back inside. I'm not sure if you can hear me now. We're back. Oh, the camera's gone again. Okay, so we're back outside. Okay, we're back outside, inside the hotel. There are some much more courageous rebels. We saw on the live stream a quick glimpse. It's difficult to tell what was going on, but from what I could see, we could see they're on a polished marble floor. They seemed to be sitting in a circle. There wasn't any sound, but there seemed to be a bit of a kerfuffle going on. The sort of sound you might get if a load of strangers came and sat down in the hotel unexpectedly. They're now, there's people coming out, the police approaching. I think the police officer was just concerned. So,
Justice for Africa! Justice for Africa!
So these are people coming out of the hotel. Looks like they're doing some shopping.
Justice for Africa! Justice for Africa! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! Justice for Africa! Justice for Africa!
Shall we go?
Justice for Africa!
We'll go and find. Oh, we're back inside again. We're back inside. I'm watching the video. It's not like the normal XR live stream, is it? Luxury hotel.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've moved away from the sound. I've got here Rebel. We were speaking before. Shall we?
Yeah.
So we have to get close because the microphone's a bit dodgy. Close to the phone.
No problem.
Hold it. So with the noise and the microphone, would you just like to introduce yourself again for new people joining?
Hi everyone, I'm Choco, she, her, and I'm part of Extinction Rebellion Hackney, and involved in this action through a coalition of movements as well. And basically we're here today to protest this energy summit that's happening in the Mayfair Hotel. I guess our co-messaging is that we have to end oil colonialism. And, you know, colonialism is just this extracting of resources in one place, leaving it devastated for the benefit of another population. So that's what's happening. Those big oil and gas companies who have represented at this summit, such as Schlumberger, Total, Shell, Perenco, and more, are basically trying to make deals to do some new oil and gas exploitation in some African countries. And what do they leave behind, this exploitation? Polluted waters that the population relies on for fresh water. They completely devastate the wildlife habitats as well, and do a lot of pollution there. And that sometimes also has to drive some of populations away from where the exploitation is taking place. So there is really a striking importance of inequality there, of, you know, the exploitation is for Western markets, but they're leaving behind like devastation in countries in Africa. So that's something we need to address. And that's why we call it colonialism, oil colonialism. And basically, I guess that also links back to the fact that, as we know, on the front line of climate change effects are those countries, such as some of the African countries. There's been, for example, in South Africa, 400 people who died recently because of a rain bomb drop, which is basically the effect of a tsunami falling from the sky, which is terrifying. And the African continent is responsible for circa 4% of global carbon emissions.
Yeah.
And that's another inequality that's really striking. So we need to think about reparation and loss and damages. That was like sidelined at the COP26 where it was mentioned, but there is a duty of reparation where countries who benefited from the exploitation of fossil fuels have now to redistribute those resources to enable climate mitigation in the countries that are in the front line. That's extremely important. And I think, you know, it's a shame that those summits are happening here in the UK. The decision making is being made in the UK. We have a responsibility, and really, it's an arms game where oil and gas companies are trying to twist the arm of the African head states to make, you know, to allow permits that exploitation in the countries and devast their land. But really, we have to think about our responsibility of hosting such summit, and we also have to think that it's not a fair conversation. Like, there is a big debt, and that some countries are in, and this debt is driven by basically the global north financial sector that has been made and created for the benefit of the global north.
Yeah.
That has to be addressed as well. The debt has to be cancelled, otherwise the summit is just a power play of twisting arms, and, you know, this is going to damage the local population, local habitats, and more broadly increase, you know, global warming, because once this is burnt, it's released in the atmosphere.
So so although we're talking about climate change, it's sort of highlighted inequalities at different levels. So there's an inequality between Africa and the global north, and there's inequality between ordinary people in Africa, and maybe some of the wealthy Africans will be coming here to take part in this hotel. So although we're talking about climate change, it's just a completely unfair world, isn't it? And it's been like this for so long, and nothing's ever happened about it until now, until it affects us. Then we're people in the West. Yeah.
I would say that like the representatives of African head states are in a very difficult financial situation.
Yes.
And that's why they are looking at how to change that. And obviously the oil and gas company know that very well. They're going to use that to leverage and to allow those permits. But the real shame is on those oil and gas companies. Like, we've heard it from the UN Chief Secretary that delay means death, delay in ending fossil fuel industry, and that the real criminals are the ones allowing and doing more oil and gas exploitation now. We have to know that there's this huge money obviously involved, and that money needs to be invested in the green energy transition of African countries and others. Like, the African continent right now has circa 40% of the potential for renewable energy production, but it only receives 2% of green energy investment. So there is another inequality there. But instead, oil and gas companies are trying to twist arms and do more exploitation for the benefit of Western markets. So that's something we need to highlight here.
So if you could say something to the people in there attending the summit, what would your message be?
I think really the message is to understand that this is not a fair battle, first of all.
It's not, yeah.
Like, so there's loads of inequalities, and everyone has the power at the end to stand up for what they believe in. And you know, here today we're trying to platform some of the African activists who are on the line.
Yes.
You know, here we're like super privileged just doing a peaceful protest,
yes.
But some people on the line in those African countries are being killed for, you know, putting their bodies on the line against the new exploitation of oil and gas. So, yeah, those industries really need to reconsider their position, and they need to really push. They have the financial power to push for green investment.
Yes.
And so that's what should happen, really.
They could do that because they've got all the business relationships and all the people in Africa. It's very cheap, very profitable for sustainable energy. So there's no reason not to do it, is there?
No, I guess the reason, like, it's a complex problem, obviously, and like it's not going to be solved overnight. Yeah. But I think it's important to know that why is this decision making happening in the UK now? Like, there is a responsibility of everyone in the summit to be like, why is this happening now? Why are we allowing more oil and gas exploitation? It shouldn't happen that way, especially at the hands of people who are already on the front line of the worst effect.
Okay, actually, we've just got some more video from inside. Would you like to commentate on this? So what's happening there, Joko? There's people sat on the floor.
Yeah, it seems like there are people sat on the floor.
Are they glued on, do you think? Are they locked on?
Yeah, I think it might be, to be honest. They're definitely doing some disruption in whatever form that is. It seems to catch interest of a few attendees, and hopefully, you know, they're probably saying a message of ending oil colonialism, and you know, what we want really is the attendees to start this kind of conversation.
So there's a police officer there. It looks exactly the same as this. And there's some people looking through the window.
Okay, so
what happens if we look through the window? Will we see? Let's see if we can see anything in there. It's not fair. There's people looking across, we can see. I think it's much more up this way. Let's see if we can poke through the window this end. Let's see. Come with them to the talking, so can you see anything inside going on? Oh, look, there's look, there we are. So there's people sat on the floor. There's a police officer there checking a bag. There's another police officer looking on. So we can see the people. It looks like I'm guessing they're locked on. This is a good place to campaign, because you can wave to your friends from the outside world. It seems quite calm at the moment.
billion Africans depend on fuel oil to cook. 1 billion Africans cook on open fires, which are unhealthy, which destroy the forests, which lead to desertification, which lead to ill health. That could be solved through renewable energy so easily. It could change drastically people's lives for almost no cost whatsoever, apart from your profits in the next few years. Stop funding oil and fossil fuels. Invest in renewables. We have to invest in renewables. We're just avoiding reality.
So I'm doing this action because we don't need any more fossil fuel projects. The science clearly says that, and is exploiting people in Africa and global majority of people everywhere. And large corporations are making huge amounts of profit off it, which is wrong. And I know it's a complicated subject, and I'm definitely not an academic, but also it's colonialism, and the science clearly says we don't need any more fossil fuels. And the people in this conference are discussing both of those things, which is wrong. So this is my way of standing with the frontline communities of resistance in Africa and across the world who are risking their lives to oppose this, and this is the least I can do. And yeah, it's my way of saying fuck you to these big bosses and companies that are playing with people's lives for their own benefit.
In London, in plain sight, in a posh hotel, Mayfair, the oil giants are meeting with African countries as if there wasn't a climate emergency and it was perfectly normal to do new oil and gas deals in plain sight. And this is not acceptable, and we need to throw light on this so that it begins to stop. So the voices that are heard currently are the voices that are considered respectable and powerful. And these are the voices that we see wandering about the corridors of the Mayfair Hotel. They are also the voices and the powers that have brought us to this crisis. But for generations, like decades or even centuries, the voices of Africans within the African continent have been speaking out against oil exploration and other resource extraction that has brought devastation to their communities and now is bringing devastation to the entire planet. So, you know, experience should teach us that we shouldn't listen to those that appear powerful, but those on the ground who know the reality. We're taking action because how can we stand by and watch new oil contracts being made in full daylight during a climate emergency? We urge you all to take whatever action you can, immediately.
Well, that was exciting. We're back outside with a slightly less brave streamers. Inside, if you've just seen that, there were people sat on the floor. I'm guessing they're rebels. They were chanting things like "Justice for Africa." That sums up quite well the 4 demands. And as we've been hearing, climate change in Africa and the way the fossil fuels have been exploited, there's lots of layers of injustice. Injustice between the global north and Africa, injustice between the wealthy people in Africa and the poor people who suffer quite badly and treated unfairly. We were filming through the window, which I was feeling quite clever about. They're now covering up. This looks like there's one more window we might be able to get cover from. So I'll point that through the window. There's still people. There's still people, you can see that in the back there, are still lying on the floor. I'm guessing they're locked on. They've been cordoned off by the police. We're all standing here trying to film and holding up banners, which we're exploiting every inch of potential. We cover up the windows, there's less glare. So, I didn't know that was going to happen. I was busy live streaming. I was a bit indignant that someone had some better film. But it's absolutely astonishing, isn't it? What people in XR do. They look quite relaxed. The police officer's just standing watching. It looks like there's a staircase blocked off, so I'm not sure people will be able to go up there. They've blocked off one window we were filming through, because obviously they don't want to see it. Oh, here comes a stepladder. Looks like they're going to block off another window. But I don't think we're going to miss much, because they're locked on, they're inside. They're going to be lying there for some time, because if they're locked on, the police will have to come and cut them out. I don't know, and that's quite a noisy process, quite a smelly process with the power tools and everything. In fact, that way the police would probably cause more disruption getting them out than they would do just lying there and leaving them, just walking around them. But still, you can't leave them there all day. So how many people are there, do you think? 1, 2, 3, 4?
Here come the curtains.
Okay. Right, I've just heard, so there's people lying on the floor there. I think we'll just make the most of this last video we can, because they're going to put another white sheet up so we can't see the goings on. They're going to be there quite a while, because the police extraction unit will have to come with all their power tools, and it's quite an impressive operation the police have now. They're quite used to dealing with XR and they know how to deal with them. It's going to be quite a long time there, or it might be they'll just decide if they agree to go in a couple of hours, they might just leave them there and be less disruption than all the noise and stuff. Still, here comes the white sheet, so we won't be able to see anymore. But fortunately, the brave people inside. Hey, look, there I am, first time in history. So, the brave people inside, before they did the action, they made some videos to explain why they're doing the action, and they can explain much better than me why they did it. So whenever the person back at base is ready, we're going to play a video and they're going to give them a voice about why they're so concerned about what's going on in Africa.
I'm taking action at the African Energy Summit to support the demands of African activists and campaigners whose voice isn't going to be heard here. Because it's our responsibility in the global north to tackle these multinational companies whose profits are going to flow from Africa directly into the banks of cities like London. And in this posh hotel, the oil barons will act like colonialists have always acted. They'll be carving up the map of Africa for new oil and gas reserves. And in the wake of those explorations, there's going to be decimation of communities and environments. That's what the Niger Delta has taught us for over the past 50 years. They're going to be white hands extracting wealth from Africa, as it's always done. So I'm standing in solidarity with activists like Vanessa Nakata of Uganda and Nemo Bassi of Nigeria, who are calling for an end of oil colonialism. I'm also standing with the activists of Zambia and other African nations, calling for an end to all African debt. For without cancellation of the debt, it's going to be impossible to get rid of the oil and gas investment. I'm also standing with the activists who are calling for a massive expansion of renewable energy technology and investment. Because Africa has got so much potential in renewables, and yet is getting a fraction of the global investment in it. Africa really does need a just transition to energy. 80% of rural areas at the moment have no access to electricity. 1 billion people are reliant upon dirty fuel wood in order to cook. And renewable energy investment would solve those problems. But that's not what these polluters are going to be doing. That's not what they're talking about. If they're allowed to operate this conference, there's going to be millions of tons of carbon dioxide pumped into the atmosphere as a consequence. There'll be countless people pushed off their land in order for the extraction to take place, and there'll be massive pollution of land, air and water. It's the responsibility of the global north to take the knee off the neck of Africa. And as the activists are saying to this conference, let Africa breathe. So by being here, I'm going to use my voice to carry that African message, and I'm going to use my body to enforce it.
Okay. Hello everyone. I'm on my hands and knees. I'm right bent over. I've got my bag held up against the window. If you can just see at the background, there's a man lying on the floor, black trousers and a white shirt. I think he's locked on. I counted 4 or 5 XR people in there. At one time, they were live streaming from inside, which is very exciting. That's stopped now. The police are there, walking about and maintaining it. Until now, there'd just been a single van of police officers. They were just happy to watch the protest going on. Since the inside actions happened, more police officers have arrived, and also there's a proper police liaison police officers, so they're much more, they're not just happen to be the police officers on call. These people are specialised in dealing with these sorts of situations. We were all filming through the window. We've now covered up the window with white material, which is why I'm on my hands and knees filming from underneath. I've got my bag against the window. I can't really see what's going on. There's people walking backwards and forwards, so I think the hotel guests are going past still. They are still using the reception, which is where they are. We're at the Mayfair Hotel in London, and we're here because there's what's called the Africa Energy Summit. So really, as you can guess, it's the Africa Fossil Fuel Summit. And talking to the rebels here is a great concern about just how unjust the whole system is, not just between the wealthy countries in the global north and those in Africa, but also between ordinary people in Africa. For example, 14,000 people have lost their income, lost their land for a project that hasn't even started. It's just planned in the future. So they've got no compensation. 13,000 people were killed in a single cyclone. Millions of people have been moved, have been displaced by the cyclone. We never hear anything about this. We never hear anything really about how serious things are in Africa. And you might think, well, why is Africa still exploiting oil and gas, given that it's likely to have 700 million refugees by the 2030? It's because many countries in Africa are desperately poor, and one of the reasons they're poor is because they don't get a very good deal with the gas and oil exploration, but also they have a lot of debt. And cancelling the debt has been identified as an important thing to getting Africa back on its feet and making things just for over 20 years, and it still hasn't happened. So the time for sending emails and having nice discussions to try and help the people in Africa, which, like the other things people do to try and tackle climate change, never really worked. And so the same with Africa. So what can I see? I'm right behind the reception desk here. There's people walking past, and they definitely are guests. There's 2 stark differences between the people who are using the hotel and the rebels outside. Is the rebels outside, when you join XR, you don't sign up to any rules, but over the months and years, you come to understand the world, and you come to understand things like how polluting the fashion industry is. And so people in XR, I think, tend to buy less clothing and make it last longer. When you come to a posh part of London, you meet a completely different group of people who think having new clothes is very excitable. It's a very exciting thing to have. And there's people going past in nice dresses and posh suits. So it's quite a stark reminder that justice of people staying in the hotel have quite comfortable lives, and the people outside the hotel protesting, who could have much more comfortable lives, but have chosen to give it up to try and help, in this case, the people of Africa, but could be you know, think of all the things that need to happen to climate change. Think of all the lives that will be lost in the future. There's so few people here today. If you're in the area, if you'd like to come to, I think it's Stratton Street, WC1. It's off Berkeley Street, which is opposite the Ritz in London. The closest tube station is Green Park. There's very few people here. I'll just quickly turn the camera around so you can see. There's so few of us. Everyone's welcome to come along. We welcome everyone. Just hang on. I'm not so young that kneeling on the floor is a comfortable thing to do for very long, but let me keep going. So, we're back inside the hotel again. The police don't really seem to know what to do. I think they're watching on. So I can see here, there are actually 2 police liaison officers now on the outside, and 3 other police officers, and they're looking on much more carefully now. Before the police were just sort of keeping themselves to themselves. So we heard a bit of. So it looks like the live streaming is still going on. I wonder where that's coming from. There's some chanting. Okay. So I think that streaming is from before. Now, so it's gone a bit quiet. I suppose the stream has been stopped. So now it's just a waiting game. I'll tell you what, people staying in posh hotels are getting more than they bargained for today, aren't they? I can't tell what's going on, but I can see 2 pairs of legs looking my way, so maybe there'll be another curtain arriving in a minute. I'm not sure how useful this is. I think I might stand up for a minute, depending on what message I get in my ear, and then stretch my legs, and then I'll sit down. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna stand up a bit and stretch my legs. And I've been told to show the scene. This is the Mayfair Hotel, where the Africa Energy Summit, or Africa Fossil Fuel Summit, is going on. There's a restaurant. The people staying at the hotel are now going through the restaurant door. Radiator, give us a wave. And your friend. Oh, he can't hear me. There's 2 brave rebels who climbed up. First of all, they started off on the main canopy. But when it became clear people were still getting in, they quickly nipped across that ledge. They got there, they put another banner up to make sure the people know why we're here. There's a couple of people there, walkie-talkies, watching on in plain clothes. There's some rebels. We've all turned the banners now towards. We're all turned the banners facing in, so people in the restaurant know why we're here. Behind these 2 windows that have been blocked off, there are rebels that they've locked on inside the hotel. Astonishing courage. They were chanting "Justice for Africa," which you very rarely hear chanted in the main reception of posh London hotels, and this is a very expensive part of London. Are you able to see what's going on? Are you able to see what's going on in there?
Yes.
From this window? Okay. I've been seeing what's going on there, so there's a security guard there. There's a police van. The police liaison officers videoing as well. So there's still only 1 police van and a police car. So there's a few more police officers, but they're still not. They still seem to be taking a bit of a softly approach at the moment. Where you can tell when the proper protest removal people arrive, they're much more businesslike and get on with things. So there's very few of us. There's lots of social media going on. It would be good if anyone's listening, if they Google the event, see if it's being covered in the news, because it's always nice to know. Actually, I'll just ask these people. Are you on your mobile phones? Have you tried Googling to see what news coverage we're getting? And maybe we could report it on the live stream. Yeah. It's getting that stage of the stream now. We want more content. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna Google. So this will be an interesting test. How at one time when XR started off, something like this would be quite major news. So it'll be interesting to find out 3 years on how much interest the media are still paying to us. Because I think it's quite a nice protest. You can see there I don't know if you can see some fake oils through.
The press release hasn't gone out yet.
The press release. Oh, so okay. So the press release hasn't gone out. So you're getting this news firsthand before anyone else in the world knows about it. So
there won't be any news at least until that goes out.
So when will the press release go out?
There is actually some. No, there is some coverage already.
Oh, we've got some coverage. The Daily, it's in the Daily Mail. So what does the Daily Mail say? So Daily Mail: Extinction Rebellion activists storm Mayfair Hotel during Energy Summit. Activists hold protests in foyer and hang "End Oil Colonialism" banner from the front balcony. So that's for the Daily Mail. That's quite a straightforward headline, isn't it? Do they make any? Normally with the Daily Mail, they seem to have quite a good, or at least reasonable news coverage. It's their opinion pieces in the. So eco-activists have entered a swanky 5-star hotel. Well, that's true. As part of an anti-oil protest. And oil. It doesn't mention anything about my streaming, does it? Oh, look, that's good. A photograph from inside. According to the event's website, the event brings together Africa's upstream industry for unique. Well, it certainly is a unique event. You can't deny that. Eco groups vowed to send millions of people onto the streets. Well, that's true. XR has announced in September. Get ready, everyone. We're going to have millions of people on the streets. And it goes on to mention the public order bill and Insulate Britain. Well, no Daily Mail article will be complete without Insulate Britain. And it's got some nice photographs of the other rebellions. So how do we judge that as a Daily Mail article? Are you happy about that? Is that fair?
I think as you said, the Daily Mails, often their comment pieces are horrendous, but their news coverage so far has
do have proper journalists in there somewhere.
Yeah, they do, and they've got good photos and they've reported it factually as it's happened.
And they're the first in there, aren't they?
They are the first in there, yeah. We're hoping for more coverage. I think it's a good start.
Is there any other coverage there? Is that the main one, do you think?
That's the main one so far, but as I said, the press release hasn't even
Well,
gone
let me know. Come and if you see anything. Thanks.
There'll be more.
Okay. So, I'm not sure where all the protesters have gone now. I think they're sitting down and having a rest. Let's see what else we can see. Okay, we're going to play okay, I shall just check my fact sheet. So, we're here today in London because there's an Africa Fossil Fuel Summit going on. It's obviously be happening in Africa, and it should be about renewables because Africa can provide 40% of the world's renewable energy. Because it's very sunny, it's on the equator. Mysteriously, the fossil fuel companies, who have all the business contacts, are quite happy to carry on drilling for fossil fuels and don't seem that keen to extract or to produce renewables. So let's have a look at my fact sheet. So the event is going to take place over 3 days. It's going to have 2 dinners plus an awards ceremony. And out of all that time, they're only going to dedicate 1.5 hours towards renewables. It's 7 months since the last one, so they're very busy at a time when the International Energy Authority says we mustn't have any new fossil fuel things. Hello, there's a police officer coming my way. Thank you. Yeah, he's always a good mood. So, 7 months, they're quite keen to develop fossil fuel projects, aren't they? So let's carry on down. So the global north controls 60% of the projected oil production in Africa and 30% by just 4 companies, which is Total, Eni, ExxonMobil and BP. Plus, if you think, well, maybe the fossil fuel companies are committed to this sort of thing, fossil fuels, the finance industry could easily move away. One of the protesters said, well, the hotel could have quite a very successful business and never have to host any events like this. So there's all sorts of people on the periphery who sort of enable the fossil fuel businesses to keep going. And when it comes to finance, the big sponsors, according to my piece of paper, are JP Morgan, Barclays, Standard Chartered and the China Development Bank. And in fact, at the moment, there are almost 1,000 fossil fuel projects planned in Africa at a time when we ought to be running them down. What else can I tell you? Right, I've got some examples here of how damaging the climate change already is to people in Africa. You hear people say we must keep increasing global warming compared to pre-industrial levels to 1.5 degrees Celsius because that's a safe limit. But really, at 1.2 degrees Celsius, there are people in less fortunate parts of the world, like Africa, that are already suffering quite badly. So, for example, in East Africa, they've had 4 years of drought, and that means now 20 million people face starvation. And I read online, everyone's looking to see when the rains are going to come again. 20 million people are suffering extreme hunger at the moment. The most interesting one is in Mozambique, because academics have quite a good understanding of how civilizations collapse. Every civilization in history has collapsed, and one of the things academics look towards is that a country can quite often cope with one, even very serious problem, but if it has two or more that has to try and deal with it at the same time, then it just makes it much more difficult. And if a country is already on the verge of being able to keep going, any little nudge from climate change or any other thing can really push it over the edge. So in Mozambique, there's been a 30% fall in public expenditure between 2014 and 2019. And I'm guessing public expenditure in Mozambique wasn't that high to start with. And that's due to the Mozambique government took out debts from London financiers. Here's all the fake oil on the ground. The Mozambique government borrowed money from London, and its legality is in question. So I'm sure it was done properly, but people have questioned its legality. And it was hoping to pay for pay the debt off with income it expected to get from gas exploration offshore. And that money never came, though, because number one, there was a great cyclone that did a lot of damage, and number two, there were Islamist gunmen have been interested in, new money coming to Africa, thought there might be something to exploit there. So in that poor old Mozambique, it's got a government that's borrowing money in questionable circumstances. It's got climate change. It's got Islamist gunmen. It's got the fossil fuel industry, which is happy to take its gas and doesn't seem quite so concerned about the welfare of its people. So that's Mozambique is a country that's already struggling with 3 or 4 separate problems, and we're only now at 1.2 degrees Celsius increase in temperature compared to pre-industrial levels. So I think an academic would say Mozambique is a great risk. It only needs one thing, People say, well, how in 8 years' time could there possibly be 700 million climate refugees in Africa? It's because there's lots of countries that are already on the margins, and they only need, one extreme weather event, one political coup, increase in Islamist militiamen causing trouble. It could all fall apart. And do you think we'd find out about it? I suppose it might be in the news, but certainly there's all sorts of things that happen in Africa that are very serious that we never hear about. So there was a cyclone in 2013 that killed 13,000 people and displaced millions of people. So when you say there'll be hundreds of millions of refugees in Africa in 8 years' time, well, there's already millions of refugees in Africa. Recently, there was someone's explaining to me what they call I think it's a rain bomb, they described it as. It killed 400 people, which is the most extraordinary amount of rain happened in Africa. I also saw something similar happening in Australia, where climate change, people look at say, well, an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius isn't very much. Surely that doesn't sound too serious. It's not the general averages that go. The things that cause the problem are the extreme weather events, and as temperatures warm, they become more severe and they happen more often. So I think my legs have recovered now. I wonder if I can put the lens against the window and see if we can see what's going on inside. If you weren't here before, there's some people actually locked on. XR people locked on inside the... Let me see if I can hold my bag up against the window to stop the glare. I can't quite see, I'm just not in the right place. I'm not sure if this security guard. Yeah? Okay. 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 Okay.
climate activist in Uganda and founder of the Rise Up movement. This audio is taken from a recent Stop ECOP webinar.
It's evident that there is no future in the fossil fuel industry. It is evident that the fossil fuel industry has done more harm, in our communities. It's also evident that we cannot serve fossil fuels at our dining tables. Every time people sit at their dining tables, what they wait for is food that is grown in our farms. But with the increasing climate disasters, the farms are getting destroyed. With the increasing disasters, the crops are getting dried up. The soils are getting polluted because of the fossil fuels. And in regards to the East Africa crude oil pipeline, we know how very many people think this is a way of jobs and economic development. And many times activists have been called enemies of economic progress, but we know the impacts. We know the impacts on our food, we know the impacts on our water, we know the impacts on our livelihoods. We know what happens when oil is extracted. We know what happens to our soils. And as Hilda and other panelists have explained, countries like Uganda, they're heavily dependent on agriculture for the survival of so many communities. And they're also heavily dependent on their waters, for example, in the lakes for their survival. Any kind of oil spill, for example, in Lake Victoria, would harm about 40 million people. Any kind of pollution of our soils and our lands, it would affect the food access of so many people. It's evident that the climate crisis is already affecting so many people, not only in Uganda, but across the African continent. Uganda is experiencing extreme weather conditions, extreme heat, extreme floods, and extreme landslides that are affecting the lives of so many people. That's why we cannot allow any new fossil fuel developments. The IEA has made it very clear that if we want to have a reach to 1.5 degrees Celsius, then we cannot have any new fossil fuel developments. But even at 1.2 degrees, we are already seeing the worst of the climate crisis on the African continent. We are seeing the occurrence of floods like the most recent ones that maybe most of you have seen in South Africa. We've seen the floods in Sudan. We've seen the Eastern Africa drought that left over 26 million people with no access to food. We are seeing the West Africa food crisis that is leaving millions of people with no access to food. The latest IPCC report projects that 700 million people in Africa will be displaced because of drought. So it's evident that the climate crisis is affecting so many people on the African continent. At the beginning of the year, we saw the occurrence of a tropical storm Anna in southern Africa that left over 80 people dead. In the same region in 2019, we saw the occurrence of Cyclone Idai that ripped apart large parts of the African continent and left more than 1,300 people dead. We also saw Cyclone Batsirai this very year affecting Madagascar and leaving many people dead, leaving infrastructure, schools, hospitals destroyed. This is what the climate crisis is about. It's more than the data points or the statistics that we see. It's about the people. So when we stand up and demand for an end to the eco project, it's not just to stop the emissions that will be contributed because of this pipeline. It's for the survival of the people. It's for the protection of our lands. It's for the protection of our lakes. It's for the protection of our cultures. We know that losses and damages are already happening in Africa. We know that very many communities are already losing their cultures. They're already losing their identities. But as these losses and damage continue to happen, because of the fossil fuels. People must know that we cannot adapt to the loss of our lands. We cannot adapt to the pollution of our soils. We cannot adapt to oil spills in our lakes. We cannot adapt to the loss of our histories or our identities. That's why there is a need to put an end to all fossil fuels if we want to have a chance of limiting global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And like I said, we are at 1.2, but it's already showing so much devastation across the African continent. A lot of money is being put into greenwashing this project. And like I said at the start, many people, all they see is jobs, all they see is economic development. It kind of seems like a certain sort of black gold. But then when you educate yourself and get to understand that this project is going to displace over 100,000 people, when you understand that a third of this pipeline is going to go through the largest inland freshwater lake in Africa, if you understand that it's going to go through over 200 rivers, that it's going to go through different wildlife habitats and affect different animals, that it is going to affect so many people, then you will know the real truth about this project. So educate yourself, use whatever platform that you have, either your social media, and use whatever opportunity that you get, either in interviews or events, to talk about the real impacts and what Africa really needs. We cannot allow the African continent to be sidelined at a time when the whole world is transitioning to renewable energy. And we cannot allow the global north to dump and export their emissions in our nations.
Well, you're joining us for this XR live stream from a luxury hotel, or at least outside the luxury hotel. Inside, as the brave rebels have locked in. We're at the Mayfair Hotel in London. It's the venue of the Africa Energy Summit, which, as you can guess, is really fossil fuels rather than renewable energy, which is a shame because Africa has the potential to generate 40% of the world's renewable energy. I'm not sure how much you can see there at the moment. We were filming through the windows because it locked on in reception, and they were live streaming from reception as well, which is all very impressive. I'll just give you a general summary of what's going on. We got here about, I don't know, 7:30, something like that, and two brave rebels climbed up a ladder. They went onto the canopy at the front entrance, and they put the banner up. There were people standing all along underneath with banners and with placards. There's one person still standing there to try and get to passers-by. The protesters seem to be having a bit of a rest at the moment. The energy has gone out of it, which is good because it's nice and quiet, which is ideal for live streaming, although it may not be quite so good for saving the world. You can see the police were quite relaxed where we were just outside. We weren't stopping people getting into the hotel. We were standing at the entrance, but we weren't stopping them getting in. Then I was busy live streaming and suddenly I got a message, there's something going on inside. The people were live streaming in that. I think there's about 6 people inside who are locked on, something like that. There are people still getting into the hotel through the side entrance, which is fine, because it's the police who have cordoned off the main entrance. And in fact, the hotel have got a security guard stopping people coming out. There were 2 people on top of the canopy. When they realised what's happening, they ran across that narrow ledge. They leapt on. You can tell they're young people, completely fearless and quite physically fit. They leapt across the ledge, and now they're sat up there having a little picnic by the looks of things. Since people locked on, there's more police here. They're taking more of an interest. I suppose they've got to decide now. The police have got to decide how to respond to balance that right of protest and stick to the law, because that's what the police do. I can see over there, I won't film him, but I can see there's a senior police officer who's just sort of surveying the goings-on and trying to make a decision. It seems like, I wonder how long the people inside will stay locked on for, because it'd be quite disruptive to move them out of the way. There'll be, you know, if you've seen people being delocked at any of the other rebellions, it's quite a noisy protest. There's lots of dust, and at the moment, the hotel is still using reception. When I was videoing through the window, you could see people in their, you know, glamorous clothes, because it's a very nice hotel, very expensive part of London. So that's what they've got to decide. They will have to be removed sooner or later. You can't spend weeks locked on the hotel reception. So okay. So now we're going to go across. We've got a clip from Africa telling us about the seriousness of the situation.
Greetings, friends, colleagues and comrades. My name is Omar El Mawi and I am from East Africa. I am speaking to you today because you can help ensure Total Energies and China National Offshore Oil Company, who have millions invested in building the world's largest heated oil pipeline through my community. We need to stand up with us and help us to put a stop to this project, because the project not only threatens to displace hundreds of thousands of families and farmers from their land, but also spills from the pipeline pose great risks to water resources and wetlands in both Uganda and Tanzania, including the Lake Victoria Basin, which over 40 million people rely upon for drinking water and food production. Additionally, the pipeline will rip through numerous sensitive biodiversity hotspots and risk significantly degrading several nature reserves crucial to the preservation of threatened elephant, lion, and chimpanzee species. This is currently an injustice going on. Total Energies are in cahoots with China National Offshore Oil Company to extract 1.7 billion barrels of oil and build the world's longest heated crude oil pipeline from a beautiful village of Hoima in Uganda to the port of Tanga, which is a magical and pristine place. This is an injustice to Ugandans and Tanzanians and the entire continent of Africa. We therefore call for the stoppage of this injustice and in return asking for funding of renewables which are in plenty and pay for loss and damage caused by these oil companies at the expense of the entire African continent and the world. Friends, we have to end the corporate colonialism from oil companies and call for true development projects that benefit Africa and Africans, not just oil barons and their shareholders. I hope this project pains you like it does me and 100,000 people who are all living within Uganda and Tanzania that are threatened to be displaced by this project. Kindly share our plight with others, because with you joining us, we can stop this injustice, but we really need you on our side. Thank you.
Okay, so we're back at the Mayfair Hotel in London. We're here because it's the venue of the Africa Energy Summit, which is really Fossil Fuel Summit. Out of the 3 days, they're only going to spend 1.5 hours discussing renewables, which is a shame, because Africa has the potential to generate 40% of the world's renewable energy. Mysteriously, the fossil fuels don't seem interested in investing in that, so it's quite a big concern, the summit. There's representatives from 12 African countries, plus all of the major oil companies here, and dozens of other ones as well. If you're wondering why the Africa Energy Summit is in London, it's a good question, and it's because 60% of all the fossil fuel projects that are planned are controlled by businesses in the global north, and 30% of them are controlled just by 4 businesses, which are BP, Total, ExxonMobil, and ENI, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, ENI, something like that. And I'm talking to the rebels, it's become apparent as how, although we're talking about climate change here, there's a great deal of injustice in the world. So there's injustice between the global north, which is controlling the oil production and is having its summits in nice hotels in London, and the poor African countries, which are having to sell their oil because they're desperately poor. And one of the reasons they're desperately poor is because they still have debts to repay. And the African countries must realise that, you know, in 8 years' time, the United Nations says there's likely to be up to 700 million refugees due to climate change in Africa. But, they're just so poor they have no choice. So what are the demands of the protesters is they cancel the debt and that of countries in Africa. And that's something that's been campaigned about for like 20 years, this injustice. It's a good way to get Africa back on its feet, but it doesn't happen. But one of the other things they're campaigning for is they want the fossil fuel businesses to leave Africa. They say they've caused so much damage in the past. They've, the Ugandan Delta in Nigeria. There's countless cases of, pollution in Nigeria last year. I think there were 100,000 barrels of oil spilled in a single accident. It's damaging the environment. Hundreds of people were killed in a fire at an illegal refinery. And one of the examples of injustice is that people in Africa don't have access to clean energy, which if they had renewable energy, they could do that. So again, it's injustice all the way down. Let's see what else they've got on their demands, the protesters. They want people to fund renewables, and they want what's most important of all is they want people to pay loss and damage, and that was something that was agreed at the 2015 Paris Agreement. That the poorest countries are the least polluting and they suffer the most damage from climate change, so they need to be properly paid. The actual amount that's agreed is tiny. There's trillions of dollars of damage done every year. It's a tiny amount of compensation that's paid, and even then, only half of the compensation that is due has been paid. So when wealthy countries don't want to pay the money in loss and damage, they don't have to. When poor countries in Africa have to pay the money in the form of debt, they have to pay that back. So another example of injustice. Where we heard examples of African countries that are already on the limit, that are having to pay debt. They've lost their fossil fuel money due to storms or due to Islamist militiamen. So it's a really sad story. I'm very grateful for these brave people who have come out today to do this. Now, a key part of the protest, I didn't realise this at the time, I was busy live streaming. Suddenly we saw on the live stream there are people inside who are locked on. There was a bit of a kerfuffle. They were in the hotel reception. Watching it on the live stream, we could see they were sat on the floor. We weren't sure where they were at first, but then we realised they're in reception, so we could point our cameras through the window. They've been live streaming. They've locked on. I think there's about 6 XR people. At that time, police started to take the protests much more seriously. Until then, there's a single van of police officers just been watching on, because we weren't stopping people getting into the hotel, so they didn't seem to mind that too much. As soon as people locked on, more police officers arrived, and now the police officers are standing around deciding how to tackle the protesters, because they're locked on. It'd be quite a disruptive process to remove them, lots of cutting and all that stuff. And since the hotel is still using reception, they've got a bit of a dilemma. So the stream, I think, is gradually coming to an end. We're all a bit tired. We've been up quite early. I'm surprised it's still only, I don't know, what time is it now? 10 o'clock in the morning. So we've got one more video to play, and that's about After All We Flourish. But I'm going to get everyone to wave goodbye to end the stream. So the stream's over, guys. Thank you very much. Are you going to give us a wave? Are you going to give a wave? Balcony people, balcony, radiator, give us a wave. The stream's ending. Thank you so much. Thank you to the police. They don't want to wave, but we'll say thank you to them for coming. So that's the end. There's a bit of chanting going on. I'm now going to pass over to a film, and it's called After Oil We Flourish, which is a beautiful way to end a stream, given all the injustices we've been hearing about.
The Niger Delta isn't a ticking ecological time bomb. The bomb has already exploded. Shrapnel fly everywhere, in the land, in the water, and in the air. The living have long been sacrificed. Today we dream. We dream of a delta teeming with fish and diverse seafoods. We dream of a delta with sparkling, clean creeks, streams, rivers, and the sea. We dream of creeks that mirrored and echoed our joy. We dream of mangroves whose stately roots held our ground and brought us fish. We dream of days when we paddled to the tunes of beautiful songs. We dream of songs of health since replaced by songs of survival and death. 60 years ago, when oil was found in commercial quantities, there was joy and plenty of dreams sold on tales of shiny homes, hospitals, and schools, regaled with tales of the banishment of hunger and sundry value additions to our bustling harvest. We danced, celebrated, quaffed palm wine, and sacrificed some goats. We had no clue that we were next in line to be sacrificed. The footprint of oil had already been stamped on these shores, but that oil fight was over palm oil. With palm slap jaws and foreign merchants and mercenaries burnt down Akasa way back in 1895, as frontmen refused the middlemen and exploited the market with no sense of responsibility or accountability. Fast forward to 1995, and the gallows of the Port Harcourt prison swung and choked Ken Saro-Wiwa, a man of peace, and other top Ogoni leaders, and several more raped, maimed, sacked at the pleasure of the jackboots and the drillers, empowered by warlords that ultimately threw up warlords. The prophet decried the ecological assault on his community. He foresaw the days when the polluters would be in the dock, and the docks have since come calling. You cannot hide oil spills by turning the soil or burning our forests and creeks. Once upon a time, Port Harcourt was a garden city, a place of gardens, of beauty, of a good life and dance. Today, Port Harcourt is the soot city, covered by a blanket of black carbon, from gas flares, decrepit refineries, and heinous bush refineries. Before COVID-19, social distancing banished handshakes. Who could dare shake hands coated by soot? Throats choked, lungs filled, you could hardly whisper a salutation. The soot knows no geographic limits. While the mafia stoke their deadly fires and the security forces jointly smash and light their own fires, annihilating our swamps and creeks and streams. The soot suits no one. Chicks choke, adults suffocate, babies are born ahead of time. Many die ahead of their time because some people think of cash and nothing about the people or the land. Because some folks care nothing of the fact that we all share the same toxic air. Sad, isn't it, that the Niger Delta, once one of the cleanest places on planet Earth, has become one of the most polluted places on Earth. Gas flares, oil spills, well blowouts, flaming production platforms and ships, rotten pipelines, as irresponsible polluters and their collaborators point oily fingers at the victims. While oil is siphoned in ocean-going vessels, they blame villagers who skim crude from the surface of the creek as medicine for convulsions. Welcome to the Niger Delta, where thanks for the exploitation of fossil fuels and crass neglect, funerals are now routine festivals as children become elders because pollution has stolen their parents. But dreams don't die when we dream awake. Look at the horizon, we see hope. We see a once beaten people liberated, standing for self-determination, breaking the claws of oppression, we see the linking of hands and the stomping of feet to the rhythms of hope. As our mothers replant the mangroves and the polluters decommission their death traps and the periwinkles and oysters return, and the world wakes to the truth that the days of fossil fuels must now be fossilized. The Niger Delta isn't a ticking ecological time bomb. The bomb has already exploded, but we are here. The harms inflicted, repaired by a people determined to live on the land, in the water, and on the air. We are the living, long committed to telling a story of resilience and self-determination. Morning comes after oil.